Insightful podcasts by informative hosts. Insights into Things, a podcast network. Welcome to Insights into Teens, a podcast series exploring the issues and challenges of today's youth. Your hosts are Joseph and Madison Whalen, a father and daughter team making their way through the challenges of the teenage years.
Welcome to Insights into Teens. This is episode 154, Ranking Magic Kingdom Rides. I'm your host, Joseph Whalen, and my energetic and analytical co-host, Madison Whalen.
Hi, everyone.
How you doing today, Maddie?
I'm doing all right. How about you?
Doing good. And this week we have our special guest co-host with us, Michelle Whalen from Insights into Entertainment. She is our resident Disney expert and will be offering valuable insights.
Sure, we'll go with that.
How are you doing today, dear?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm doing great. So we, that's the wrong camera angle. So that's the back of Michelle Whalen's head.
The backside of water.
Great theming.
So we are fresh back from our trip to Disney,
Mm-hmm.
and we decided, actually, it was going to be a ride home discussion during our 16-hour ride home,
Right.
where we were going to rank rides and experiences, and we decided that let's turn it into a couple of podcasts. It's worth a discussion. So that's what today is. So fresh from our week in Disney, and thanks to the creative thinking afforded by our 16-hour drive, we decided to take a little departure from some of the hard-hitting topics we've been talking about for a little bit of fun. We're going to take the next couple of episodes to dive into our reviews of some of the more popular rides and attractions in Disney World. On this week's episode of Insights into Teens, we're going to examine the Magic Kingdom. But before we do that, we do want to invite our listening and viewing audience to check out the podcast and subscribe. You can find us listed as Insights into Teens for audio only. You can also find audio and video versions of all the network's podcasts listed as Insights into Things. And we're available on Apple, Spotify, Google, anywhere you can get a podcast these days. We would also invite you to write in, give us your feedback. We're always looking for suggestions on show notes as well. You can email us at comments@insightsintothings.com. You can hit us on Twitter at twitter.com/insights_things. Or you can get links to all those and more on our official website at www.insightsintothings.com. Are we ready?
Sure.
Okay, here we go. So the first area that we're going to start out with, because you were kind enough, Madison, to break these down into different areas for us, is Tomorrowland. So in Tomorrowland, we have a couple of different rides, most of which I haven't been on, so I don't see me speaking too much in this segment. Why don't you give us a rundown and give us your rating and feedback?
All right, so the first one on our list is the Astro Orbiter, of which only me and Mommy ended up going on. So I suppose you and I can really just discuss our ratings on the ride. So,
Sure.
Do you want to go first?
I would say I'd give it a 6.
So our rating scale is
1 to 10.
okay, 10 being the best.
Absolutely.
Okay. So I guess it's probably worthwhile to kind of talk about how we're rating these. So what's the criteria for rating these?
I guess for me, it's theming, uniqueness, wow factor, because I don't need it to, be a fast spinning, looping type thing. There are some people that's what they look for in a ride.
Right.
When they're going on like a roller coaster or something like that, they want to be jarred, where, I think I look at multiple aspects of it. So for me, it's not a 10. It's, it's not a 5. It's a little bit. I gave it a 6, right?
You gave it a 6.
Should
have wrote these down.
Should have. So giving it a 6 because it's a bit different than your typical carnival ride.
Okay.
And it has a magnificent view of the Magic Kingdom, and especially if you go on it at night.
That's a very important aspect of it. Yeah.
That's definitely an important thing.
Okay.
But
So-
it's a quick ride, and that's unfortunate with a lot of the rides in Disney, is that certain rides are just very short,
Sure.
and that's where it kind of gets dinged a little.
Sure. So, Maddie, what's your rating and what's your feedback? And what's your rating methodology? What are you looking for?
For me, I'm also not really looking for the thrill of the ride. In a lot of cases, I kind of find it to be like, I really like the aesthetic of rides. I like to appreciate what the ride's doing, because not every ride's trying to be a thrill ride. So I can appreciate just the general purpose of a ride, and I don't really do it on a scale factor of if I feel thrilled by it, really just the aesthetic and what it's trying to get across. And for me, I'm actually going to give it a 5 out of 10.
Okay. A little more critical there.
Like, I guess I'm really just critical of it because the wait time is just really long for it. And, like, I kind of found the ride to be incredibly overrated. It was pretty much just Dumbo, but you got a really great view, and it felt a little weird because it feels a little more fast-paced than Dumbo, and, you kind of got the generic rides of, oh, there's a ton of certain things, and they go around in a circle, and you get to go up and down in them, and
So it's Dumbo with altitude.
yeah, we'll go with that. Like, it's cool that you get to ride an elevator with it, and I mean, it is just basically trying to accomplish like Dumbo but higher up, and you get a good view of it, and it's a little faster pace. But I don't know, Dumbo itself was not always one of my favorites, and Astro Orbiter, it just seems my main factor is just that it was overhyped.
Okay. Well, I can't rate that one because I haven't gone on that one myself. But the next one that we have up is Buzz Lightyear Space Ranger Spin. Now, this one I have been on. So one of the things or some of the things that I look for in a ride for me are replayability. Do I want to go on a ride multiple times, or is it the same thing over and over? There's nothing changing. There's nothing dynamic about the ride. So the rides that make me want to go on them more are rides I enjoy more. Interactive rides I enjoy, and Disney has certainly gotten better with those. Part of it's also the popularity of the ride, which works into the wait times as well.
Yeah.
So there are a couple, in addition to what you guys had already talked about, there are a couple of things that I looked at, and one of the ones that I love is Buzz Lightyear because it's so interactive, and it's multi-person interactive. So you ride with a second person typically on there, and you're riding through, and it's a ride on the rails type thing, but you've got targets all over the place, and you can spin your capsule around, so there's that level of dynamic interaction, and you get to keep score. So, it can be a competition if I'm winning, because, it's not a competition unless I'm winning.
Yeah.
So I would give Buzz Lightyear's Space Ranger Spin probably a 7 out of 10, because it's one of my more favorite rides.
Okay.
Mommy, what do you think?
I would probably give it a 7 for the same reasons, because it can be a different ride every time you go on it. Which targets do I hit? If you happen to do some research online before you go, there are cheat sheets out there that'll tell you this target, if you hit this multiple times, you'll get the high score. You'll get the Galactic Ranger prize for it. So that's what's kind of neat. Plus the fact that for most of the ride, you have control of what direction you're in.
Yeah.
Even though you're on a track, you can still spin and, go wherever you want.
Yeah, I love that level
to
of
go.
control
So
that they give you.
That's an interesting twist that most rides, don't have. So,
Right.
yeah, I'd give it a 7.
All right. Madison?
You know what? I'll round out the trio and say I'll give it a 7 as well.
Well, there we go. It's a divine ride at 777. Look at that.
Yeah, it's like, It's definitely a fun ride for that aspect, the fact that it's so unique and it's pretty much different every time and you can control most of the experience. I guess I only really dock points because it's definitely not, I don't find it to be a particularly whimsical ride, I guess. The theming is pretty cool, but it's really, I don't really have too much to complain about. It's kind of just like, it's certainly not one that I'd like go on all the time, or it's one that I'm always like really psyched to do. It's like, if it's there, I'll do it. Like, that's kind of my thing.
Is it sometimes not there?
What, I knew, whatever.
Anyway. So I think we're pretty much all on the same page on that one. So the next one that we have on our list is one that only you have gone on, Madison, and that is Space Mountain. And that's also the only one that you've gotten lost on, too.
Yeah,
so
thanks for bringing that up.
Can't talk about Space Mountain without that. So tell us, tell us your thoughts on Space Mountain and how you'd rate that.
Alright, so for Space Mountain, ignoring the fact I've been lost on it and that I have that traumatic experience to go off of it, the ride itself, I'll give it an 8 out of 10. It was actually a pretty fun ride. Granted, most of the time I was in anxiety because going on the ride on my own, especially when I was younger, it's like, okay, I'm kind of scared, and then afterwards, occasionally I'm scared, but, you know.
So for Halloween, the Halloween party, there was a twist to it. So what was the twist, and does that affect your rating?
Okay, so the initial concept of the ride is supposed to be, it's pretty much a dark roller coaster. You don't see really much. There's a few areas that are lit up, like a few scenes, and like occasionally you'll get some visual, but most of the time you don't see the track. The Halloween twist on it was that every single light was out. You were in complete darkness the entire time unless you were boarding and exiting. Other than that, there was no light on the ride. So you saw nothing. There were no scenes. You saw absolutely nothing, and it was really jarring for me. The one light up tunnel wasn't working. The one scene with the space people you didn't see. It was pitch darkness, and it made it scarier, I will admit. You hear sounds and you don't know where they're coming from, and it's it is a legitimately kind of scary ride. I know a lot of people might not be scared by that, but I was kind of scared by it.
Does it affect your rating, though?
Probably not, because I know it's a special part of it, and it's not like the general ride. What I remember of the general ride was that it definitely had this really cool ambiance behind it, and it was supposed to be a dark roller coaster. You weren't supposed to see what was happening. You got a few cool scenes. It was definitely cool theming, and it's probably got one of the most iconic ride designs out of any of them.
Okay.
And it was definitely one of the more energized roller coasters. When I compare it to something like Big Thunder Mountain, I realized Big Thunder Mountain isn't all that much. There's definitely much more of a thrill factor when it comes to Space Mountain than it does with Big Thunder. While Big Thunder certainly has a lot of thrill to it, comparing the rides, Space Mountain certainly has way more, twists and turns, drops, and so forth. And it's definitely the scarier of the rides, and thus the more thrill-seeking.
Okay. All right. I think that's a good summary. So the last one that we have here is one that you and Mommy have been on, but I have not been on, and that is Tomorrowland Speedway. Why don't you tell us about that one, Mommy?
So that's one of the, I guess, original rides from the park, and it's these little cars that you get to ride. As long as you're tall enough to touch the pedal, you can drive the car. It's on a track. Depending on how busy the park is, will determine how many tracks they have going. When we went, there were just 2 for the Halloween party. And this was actually the first time that Maddie drove by herself. Usually all the other times that we've gone on it, we will ride together, and I'll usually drive. But this was her first driving experience.
Wow.
So it was kind of cute, because it's one of those where you actually have control of the car. Obviously, you can't go super fast, but you can go slow depending on how much you press on the gas. So it's not like one of those driving where you have no control of the car. So you actually do have control, and you can bump the median, the divider that keeps you on the track. You can keep bumping it back and forth, like the steering wheel. So
Okay.
So yeah, that's always a fun one.
Maddie, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I definitely found it to be a fun ride. You get a little more control over it, even though you're still kind of going, through the same track, but technically you can have a different time on, like, how long the ride takes you, like, depending within a certain time limit, but, like, it's not one of those rides that's the same thing over and over again.
So there's a little dynamic nature to how you drive it.
Like the people I was in back of were driving really slow, so I had to go really slow, or else I would have crashed into them, because that's another thing too, is that it's not like a bumper car where
You're not supposed to be bumping.
Yeah.
Right. So unfortunately, because they were going so slow, I had to go even slower so that I wouldn't hit them.
So it's not a legitimate race that you can do.
Yeah.
Right. Exactly.
So it's more like, Disney's version of a traffic attraction.
Yeah. So I'd give it a 6. It's one of those. Do I need to go on it?
Yeah.
Okay.
If the line's not long,
Yeah.
we would do it.
All right.
Yeah, I'd probably go with 6.5. I will give it a bit more credit for being a more unique ride. You don't really find anything else much like it, so,
What kind of strikes me as odd is that they're still using gasoline-powered cars for it.
Yeah.
In the world of so many go-kart places that do electric go-karts.
Right.
And you've got them pumping out fumes constantly here, which always kind of makes me scratch my head.
Mm-hmm.
So we did have a couple of honorable mentions. We're kind of up on the clock for the segment here, so let's run through these real quick. So we have the Monsters, Inc. Laugh Floor. Now, I've sat through that. I think it's cute. I love the air conditioning in there.
Of course, yeah.
I'd give it probably a 4 because it's really not a lot. There's a dynamic nature to it, but it's just not one that's particularly appealing to me. How would you rate that?
I'd probably give it a 6, because it is interactive. So most of the jokes kind of change.
Sure.
There is some actual interaction with guests that are there and the monsters that are up on the screen. Plus, it looks really they kind of make it look like a nightclub when you go in, because you're sitting in rows, but then they have like almost like tables with like little lights on it.
Okay.
But with no drink waitress.
Madison?
I'd probably go in the middle between you two and pick a 5. It's certainly not something that I would normally go on, but I do like the concept of it. It is more interactive. It's one of those things where it's like, if it's there, you get the air conditioning for it. That's kind of my whole thing.
Yep.
And then there's my favorite ride in Tomorrowland, and that is Walt Disney's Carousel of Air Conditioning. I mean, Progress, which is a classic from the World's Fair era of Disney.
Yep.
Which they've updated. We didn't get to see it this time because we didn't get there in time before it got shut down. This one, just for nostalgic purposes, I'd give this one a 6 myself. But the unique thing about this is you get to see multiple different stage scenes of audio animatronics without having to get up and move, because the audience actually moves around the stage.
Yeah.
So I'd give that a 6. What would you give that one, Michelle?
I would actually give it a 10.
Wow. That's nostalgia really wins out on that one.
Yeah, because of it the whole uniqueness behind it. Again, that the idea was, we're going to build these 4 different scenes, from 4 different decades, and the audience is going to rotate around it. So something completely different that hadn't been done before, and the fact that they can still modernize it and keep the story going. You know,
Okay.
where obviously things from the past, it's interesting to see that. It's interesting, you know, to take your kids and go, yeah, grandma had one of those. Or if you're going with that grandmother, like, yeah, I grew up with that. And to see what was considered modern, how, you know, it's not as modern as it is now.
Right.
So yeah, I would definitely give it a higher score.
All right.
That's me.
Madison?
I'll probably give it a 7.5 to 8 out of 10, because,
Wow, that's complicated.
well, I really do like the ride. I always found, like, I really liked how, like, the various kitchen stuff would interact. I really liked the animatronics and how they'd interact, and the really cool way that they'd move us around
Yeah.
to the different areas. And I did always, even though it was the same thing over and over, I still liked to hear what was modern of the time. And honestly, like, I really liked, like, the various people talking about all these modern stuff that was modern back then. The future scene's always really fun to see. And honestly, it was always, like, one of the air-conditioned areas that I really liked
Yeah.
going to.
Carousel of air conditioning.
We're very big on air conditioning.
Yep.
Okay, I think that's all we had.
There's one
the
more.
Back of, there is, but we're running short on time. We'll throw it out there.
Okay.
Tomorrowland Transit Authority People
I'm
Mover.
just saying.
Well, let's talk about it.
Okay.
You want to talk about it? We'll talk about it.
It's not my podcast. I'm just saying you had another ride to.
People Mover. Give me you want to talk about it? Give me your thoughts on People Mover.
It's a wonderful ride to go and relax and just enjoy and take a little tour of Tomorrowland. Because it's the only way I've ever gone on Space Mountain.
So, how would you rate it?
I'd give it a 7.
All right, Maddie.
I'll give it a 9. I actually really like it, and honestly, it's a really nice way to move around and
And wind up in the same spot.
wind up in the same spot. And you?
It's not the most efficient way of moving, but I'd give it a 7. It's a great chance to cool off, even though you're not in air conditioning the whole time.
Yeah.
You're moving, and you get a little quick tour of Tomorrowland, which I think is kind of interesting. And listening to the announcers and some of the, kitschy theme stuff that they do there, I think it's one of those nostalgia ones that you have to do. So that was all we have for Tomorrowland. We're going to take a quick break, and we'll be back to talk about Fantasyland and more. We'll be right back. For over 7 years, the Second Sith Empire has been the premier community guild in the online game Star Wars: The Old Republic. With hundreds of friendly and helpful active members, a weekly schedule of nightly events, annual guild meet and greets, and an active community both on the web and on Discord. The Second Sith Empire is more than your typical gaming group. We're family. Join us on the Starforge server for nightly events such as operations, flashpoints, world boss hunts, Star Wars trivia, guild lottery, and much more. Visit us on the web today at www.thesecondsithempire.com. Welcome back to Insights into Teens. This week we are recapping our trip to Disney and ranking rides in Magic Kingdom. Now we're going to talk about Fantasyland. The first one that we have in here is one that I think everybody knows, loves, and can't get the damn tune out of their mind. And that is It's a Small World. Now, I'll go first on this and say I avoid this whenever possible. And I managed to not go on it this time around. I know people love it for the nostalgia. It's just a little too creepy for me. And that song is like fingernails on a blackboard. I would give this one a 3. Madison, what's your rating?
I'd probably give it an 8. While I'm not annoyed by the ride as you are, I will admit the song is an earworm. It's one of those songs you can never get out of your head as soon as it's mentioned.
Yeah.
So let me sing it. No, I'm not gonna do that. I like the ride. It's a cute ride. You get a bunch of representation from a lot of different areas, and it's really nice to see the different cultures. It's cool to hear the song in different languages. And there are some really cute scenes that I look forward to seeing.
Okay. Michelle.
I will give it an 8.
Of course you will. And why is that? Justify that 8.
For the same reason. It's the nostalgia part of it. I think as well, hearing the song in the different languages, it's a very, it's one of those things that's kind of timeless in a way. So yes, it's can be an annoying song hearing it over and over again, but the message behind it about, how it is a small world after all, and showing that no matter what your background is, we can all have fun together and enjoy ourselves is the message behind it.
Wow. That was deep, man.
Thanks.
Next up is the 90-minute wait. Peter Pan's Flight. I've been on this. I love this ride. I think it's cool. It's a hanging coaster ride. You get to fly over London. It's a really cool concept. It's not worth the wait. Even the Lightning Lanes. We were there at the end of the day, and the Lightning Lane had a 20-minute wait there just to get on this ride. And the ride's literally like 2 minutes. It's one of the shortest rides in the park. It's not that unique. I would give this one probably a 4 because of how long the wait is. And if you're burning a Lightning Lane to get on this, it's a waste of a Lightning Lane pass, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Michelle?
I'd give it a 9.
Of course you would.
While I agree, I have never waited more than 15, 20 minutes to get on it. I think that's the sad part of the ride, is that there are people that will wait, an hour, 45 minutes to go on such a short ride, and that's one where if it was a little bit longer of a ride, but it's just, again, it's a neat concept because most rides you're on the ground, and this one you're actually hanging as you're, going through and seeing everything. So that's why I give it a higher score.
Okay, yeah, that's perfectly fine.
Thank
Madison?
you.
I'm going to give it a 7.
A little more realistic, okay.
It is a nice ride that it is a hanging ride, and it's not like you're on an actual track most of the time, so I will give it that. The wait time obviously deteriorates from it, and the fact that it is such a short ride. But I do like seeing the various scenes. You get different perspectives. In certain instances, you're basically the same scale as all of the characters. In other instances, you're literally over top of a very small London. So I do like the differences in perspective when it comes to that. However, do I think it's worth the wait time most of the time? No.
Yeah.
It's certainly not a ride that I would go on while waiting in that long line, because I definitely do not think it's worth it. But for what the ride is, it's really cute. Can I justify the wait time? No. But is it a unique ride? Yes.
Okay. Very well thought out. So the next one that we have is another one that only Madison has gone on, and that's the relatively new roller coaster, Seven Dwarfs Mine Train. Tell us about that one, because you've gone on this one repeatedly in a row as you burned our fast passes in the past.
Yes.
So clearly you have an affinity for this ride.
Yeah. I definitely find this ride to be very interesting. It's definitely a very interesting roller coaster because there's certain areas where there's actual scenes that are played out. There's one where you're in the mines and they're audio animatronics, and it kind of stops for a bit. And then after, when it's time for them to all go, that's when the ride starts to pick up. I definitely find the aesthetic of it really cool, because when you're walking through the longer lines, there's interactive areas, which is really cute. I like the cart style. It's a really nice aesthetic, and it's also one of the more fun roller coasters. You get more drops. It's definitely way more fast paced. But then there's moments where you do get, to slow down and see the scenes and appreciate the audio animatronics.
Okay.
So I'll give it an 8.5.
Okay, I think that's a very well thought out, very well reasoned answer on that one.
Thank you.
The next one we've all been on, and that's The Many Adventures of Winnie the Pooh. And the only thing I will say here, I'll give this a 7, because I think it's a cool ride, it's a fun ride, especially if you're a fan of Winnie the Pooh. If you have a bad back, the Tigger section is not your friend, and
Yeah.
I'll just leave it at that.
Mm-hmm.
Michelle, what are your thoughts?
I would give it an 8, because it's a unique variation of the classic dark ride. What is kind of cool is you go through different scenes throughout the Winnie the Pooh story with different characters, and each scene kind of takes on a whole different theming, and even your ride takes upon that theming as well. So to kind of mention about, the Tigger, there's a scene with rain that's very cleverly done to portray that while not actually having any water at all, in the ride.
Sure. Okay. Madison?
I'll actually give it a 9. My main reasoning being, again, like you said, it's a very unique dark ride. Not only is it, very uniquely styled, you have various things that are 2D, 3-dimensional, digitally animated. There's a lot to appreciate in the ride, because there's, such a diverse amount of, oh, well, this is 2D, but you got 3D animatronics, you've got certain areas that are animated and such, and, I really enjoyed that aspect of it. And also, on the better judgment of your back, I do like that there are certain instances where your, motion changes. You're kind of jumping in the Tigger scene. You're kind of moving in different areas, and it's not just a straight, regular ride. You feel,
Sure.
during, the rain scene, you start to feel like you're floating. It's it definitely tries to play with the motion a bit more. And I do like the interactive stuff that they have, during the wait time. I think that's a really cute area, so
Okay.
9.
I do miss Mr. Toad's Wild Ride. Just saying.
Got to go to California for that.
I know. Well,
And we did.
So.
All right.
Next up, we have Under the Sea Journey of the Little Mermaid. And have I been on this? I don't remember.
Yeah,
Yeah,
you
you
were-
have.
you
You
have.
just don't.
So I can't rate it because I don't actually remember it. So, Michelle, why don't you give us your input?
I would give it an 8. It's a more modern take on the dark ride, and since it was built into a brand new area of Fantasyland, they were actually able to make it a longer ride. The problem that you have with Winnie the Pooh and Peter Pan is that it's a short ride because of the way they built it. They've never been able to really expand it to make it a longer ride. Whereas with The Little Mermaid, it's the same concept of basically telling the story of the movie, but it's longer. So it doesn't go by as quick as some of the other ones. So I would give it an 8.
Okay. And Madison?
I'd probably do the same thing. I'd give it an 8. It is definitely a way longer dark ride, and it's certainly way more unique and bright and colorful compared to most dark rides. So I can definitely give it that aspect. It reminds me a lot of Winnie the Pooh, except I gave Winnie the Pooh a little bit of a higher score because it had more unique stuff in it, like 2D and 3D digital animation, as well as the moving cart. With the shells, you're kind of doing the same motion. You have the different animatronics and such, and my favorite scene is the Under the Sea part.
Mm-hmm.
That's a really big and open area. But I definitely think it deserves an 8 compared to what I gave Winnie the Pooh.
Okay, I think that's a good review. So I did take liberty and broke out the next two from Fantasyland to really what's a subsection of the area, and that's a Storybook Circus area there, which is a whole nother area that you can explore through Fantasyland. There's 2 rides there. One is Dumbo the Flying Elephant, which I had gone on ages ago before they redid it. But it's the same ride, but I will give my 2 cents on the redo where they put a second one in. My biggest complaint was how long the wait was versus how long the ride was. They obviously mitigated a lot of that by putting a second ride in, so they've literally got 2 sets of the same ride there. But the biggest thing for me was they put the circus tents in, where you come in now, you get a reservation, you get a little buzzer like it's a buzzer thing you get from a restaurant. And there's a play area for the kids. It's air conditioned, and the parents can go in there and wait with the kids, and the kids can have fun until it's your turn. Which, I ding Disney for the fact that they don't lower the wait times on rides. They just try to make waiting less painful. And this was one of the most successful ways of them doing that. Mm-hmm. So I'd actually give the ride a 6. The ride itself is the standard ride about up and down type ride. So the ride's not thrilling. The overall experience, I think, is, and it's a great way of handling those waits. Michelle?
I would probably give it a 6 as well for the same thing. It was definitely interesting them changing it up, adding the second one, because they always knew, and I think the biggest thing was people were waiting to go on it because of the nostalgia of it. Because you can basically go to any amusement park or any, carnival and go on something like that, but it's Dumbo. And, when they added the whole tent and the waiting, you know what? I'd rather have my little kid running around and waiting and burning off energy than, standing in a line. And that's where I think the difference is, so some of these queues have things for you to play as you're still waiting in the line. Here, you don't feel like you're waiting in the line. So it's a little different. It's almost like having a virtual queue, really.
Yeah.
It was kind of the first version of it. So
Yeah, I like that.
Yeah, I'll also round it off and just say 6. While the ride certainly isn't thrilling
So
on
this is the satanic ride then, 666.
So yeah, I would definitely give it a 6, just because the ride isn't necessarily thrilling, but the wait time is certainly one of the more unique wait times, and again, it doesn't feel like you're actually waiting. The ride itself is really just generic. It's kind of like any other ride of itself, but with the wait time, it's a better experience. So yeah, 6.
Okay, I like that. So the last one that we have in our premier rides, I guess we'll call it, is the Barnstormer, which is a roller coaster, which is only one of 2 roller coasters that I've ridden at Disney World. The other one we didn't realize was a roller coaster.
Oh, right.
We'll get into that one later.
Okay.
So I've ridden the Barnstormer several times, actually, with you and with Sam when Sam was smaller. I will rate it from the perspective of a person of size. It's a fun roller coaster. It's not very comfortable for someone, and I'm not saying, someone who's large, but someone who's tall. It does not accommodate somebody with long legs very well. Mm-hmm. So it's a quick roller coaster, but it's a fun one. I'd give it a 7. It's one of my more favorite thrill rides, I think, that I go on there.
Okay.
So that's my take on that one. What's your take, Michelle?
It's my only roller coaster kind of that I go on.
Yeah.
So,
it was the only one.
10.
Yeah, it's the only one I could convince you to actually go on.
And it took a lot to get me on it. I am so not a fan, of roller coasters. And here's a teaser when we get to Epcot and we talk about Test Track. It took me 3 years to convince myself to get on Test Track. So you figure it probably took me just as long to get on, Barnstormer. So since you would go on with the kids, it was like, oh, this is all you. I'll hold the stuff. So for me not being a roller coaster person, it's fun. I can handle it, and I scream just as much, each time, and I've gone on it multiple times, in a night. So I'd give it an 8 because, and I agree, it's definitely a kid roller coaster, so I think that's why taller people have issues with it, because it's really not meant for the bigger kids, but it's nice that adults can at least go on it, with their kids.
Sure. So. And you.
I'll probably give it an 8 as well. I give it an 8 mainly because I kind of like the theming. Like, there's a certain area where you go up and you go through, like, this one thing. Basically, the entire concept is just that Goofy is supposed to be, like, this circus guy, and he, like, does a bunch of stuff. You see a bunch of stuff in the queue where it's like he's failed at something or he's tried something and just...
And as a barnstormer, he's supposed to be like a 1920s, stunt flyer type thing, and the roller coaster itself is themed that. In fact, you can sit under the wing, which I did the one time, and that didn't work out too well getting in and out. So
Yeah.
I wouldn't recommend doing that if you're tall. Sit somewhere else.
Yeah. So yeah, I'll give it an 8. While it's definitely not a thrilling roller coaster, I do love the theming of it, and it's the only roller coaster you've ever really been on, so I appreciate that aspect of it.
All right. So our honorable mentions. We have 3 honorable mentions for Fantasyland. We've got Mickey's PhilharMagic, which, again, it's a great air-conditioned ride. I never liked the queue because they wind up packing you in there like cattle, and it takes so long for the next show because they'll start packing you in.
Yeah,
when you've got a 20-minute wait.
I don't understand why they have the queue the way they do, because especially if, not to go off on a tangent, but especially when you don't have a long line, there's, in most cases they kind of rope things off so that you just do half the line.
Right.
That one, there's no way to cut it, so you're still going in and out.
And you know exactly how long the wait is. It's always the same amount of time unless something breaks with the show.
Right.
So I'd give this one a 5. It's not one of those ones that I look to see over and over again. I've probably seen it a half dozen times. It's a 4D ride. They do the blowing the stuff in your face and the smoke and this,
And it's not a ride, it's a movie.
Right, it's a movie. But it's a 4D movie that they do that's a great break if you just need someplace to cool off and relax for a little bit and watch a movie and be done with it. The score is awesome. The music that's in there.
And unfortunately, they have added a couple of scenes since we've seen it, so we haven't actually seen it with the new enhanced, scene. So it is something that at least they're updating.
Right.
As, different
So
things come
5
out.
for me. Madison?
I'll probably go with a 6. I definitely liked the 3D, 4D aspect to it. I always found it to be a fun ride. Well, attraction for what it was. Wasn't one that I'd go on constantly, obviously, so yeah.
Okay.
6.
Okay. I think we're all on the same page there. Next honorable mention we have is Prince Charming's Regal Carousel, which, by the way, hails from New Jersey.
Yes, it does.
I've never actually been on it. All the times that I've been there, I've never been on the carousel. No air conditioning, so there's not much appeal for me. Madison, you've been on it. What are your thoughts?
I don't know if I entirely remember it, but I guess I'll give it a 4, mainly because it's a carousel. I don't know if there's really much else to it. You get like the Sword of the Stone, but it's really just one of those regular rides. I don't know if there's nostalgia attached to it. I don't find nostalgia attached to it. It's one of those rides I really don't do. So
okay, fair enough. Michelle?
I'd probably give it a 5. Just because it's probably one of the best upkept carousels versus if you go to other theme parks or, carnivals or things like that, they take pride in their horses.
Yeah.
They, take them down and will, refurbish them and repaint them. And again, if you do research, almost every horse has some sort of backstory about it, of the design, of who it's named after and things like that. So,
okay. Sounds good. And the last honorable mention's another one that I haven't been on, and that's the Mad Tea Party Teacups.
You didn't go on that?
Nope, never went on it.
Okay.
Thoughts?
I guess I'll give it a 6. It's kind of cool, one of the cooler spinning rides, not one that I'd really go on all that much, but it's cool theming.
Okay.
I'd give it a 5. It's, your typical teacup spinning. There's nothing really, different, but the
You're certainly not selling it to make me go on it at this point.
Well, I don't like spinning rides, so
yeah, that
Okay.
the memory I have is my dad trying not to spin it, and he ends up spinning it more. So that just kind of, killed it for me.
Yeah.
All right. So that's all we have for our Fantasyland segment. We're going to be right back. We'll take another quick break. We're moving on to Adventureland, Frontierland, and our ever-popular Liberty Square. We'll be right back.
Insights into Entertainment, a podcast series taking a deeper look into entertainment and media. Our husband and wife team of pop culture fanatics are exploring all things from music and movies to television and fandom. We'll look at the interesting and obscure entertainment news of the week. We'll talk about theme park and pop culture news. We'll give you the latest and greatest on pop culture conventions. We'll give you a deep dive into Disney, Star Wars, and much more. Check out our video episodes at youtube.com/insightsintothings. Our audio episodes at podcast.insightsintoentertainment.com, or check us out on the web at insightsintothings.com.
Welcome back to Insights into Teens. We are ranking Magic Kingdom rides today. And next up is Adventureland, where a couple of our biggest rides are that we like. First up is Jungle Cruise. And if you love cheesy jokes and dad jokes, then Jungle Cruise is for you. I actually would give because there's nothing thrilling about the Jungle Cruise. Although there's a couple build-ups at certain areas there where you anticipate something and then you don't get it. But you can't really ask for anything cooler than the backside of water, though.
I know, right?
I
Not
would,
of the world.
Exactly. I would give the Jungle Cruise an 8. It's one of my favorite rides in the park. Michelle?
I would give it a 10.
Of course you would. So you can't get anything better. Like 10 to me is like the absolute best, and there's nothing better.
Well, and what I enjoy about it is that it's ever changing. Like, obviously they're always going to keep the backside of water joke in, but every now and then there's a new joke that kind of pops in, and that's what I enjoy about it, because it is a little bit different from time to time. They did recently update a bunch of the scenes, so that was kind of neat to see that difference when we went this last time. So, and again, part of the scoring is also the nostalgia behind it. It's, one of the original rides. It's still there. It's still relevant. And the jokes kind of keep changing on it. So
They kind of grow on you.
Yep. Like a fungus.
Like moss.
Madison?
I'm going to give it a 9. I definitely really like the ride. It's definitely one of the ones where it's like, it's definitely one of the ones where it's really kind of fun, because you actually get like the cast member interaction, and the backside of water is obviously going to be like the most amazing thing ever. The last time we were on it, they definitely did change some of the scenes. There was certainly some more new jokes, and really I like the aesthetic of it. It's really it's a water ride, but you're not going to really get much anything like it. So.
Okay. So the next one we have is one that you don't always go on. It's another spinny lifty ride, and that's the Magic Carpets of Aladdin. That's one I've not been on. The two of you did get a chance to go on it at the tail end of our stay on Friday.
Mm-hmm.
What are your thoughts, Michelle?
I would give it a 6. Again, it's your typical up and down ride, but what's kind of interesting is the person that's in the front controls the up and down, and the person in the back can actually make your carpet, pitch forward and backward. Okay. Unfortunately, because of where it's situated, when you do get up high, you're not really getting as nice of a view of the park as you do with the Astro Orbiter. But it's one of those, hey, if the line is short enough, let's go on it. And that's what happened, when we were at the party. The party was literally ending, and they were like, hey, last call.
Yeah.
And we got on it, so.
Yeah, I'd probably give it a 6 as well, mainly for that extra mechanic of one person can control going up and down, and the other person can tilt you guys. Unlike with the others, the queue really isn't all that unique. It's really just a bunch of bars, but there is a camel
Just
that's
a bunch of bars.
but
Not alcohol bars, folks.
no,
Not prison bars.
just like general metal bars. And,
Like a fence.
Just a regular
Yes.
queue
Yeah.
line.
Fence.
Yeah. There's not as much theming to it.
but you got a camel spitting at you, so you got that.
You can't beat that,
Can't
right?
go wrong with that.
Nope. So yeah, 6.
All right, sounds good. So, and the last one of the premier rides in Adventureland is another great ride, another one of our favorites, another one of the originals, and that's Pirates of the Caribbean, which, again, great air-conditioned ride, 4-hour walk to get there through the inside of the queue. But it's it's a water ride. You get a little drop there. You get a lot of theming in there. For Halloween, they were doing some characters in the ride itself.
Yeah, they actually had live actors situated throughout the queue as well as on the ride, interacting with you as you kind of went through, and it kind of made you think, they should really do this a little bit more often.
Yeah.
Kind of a neat concept to it.
So I'd give it an 8 myself. What would you give it?
You know what I'm going to give
A
it.
10, I know.
Of course, it's a 10.
I'm just glad you're not going to 11. This isn't Spinal Tap.
That's Haunted Mansion.
I'd actually give it a 10 as well. I really like the theming of it. The queue, while it certainly is very long, they updated it, and it very much gives you the pirate aesthetic. While it is a very long ride, you immediately get entrenched in it when you walk into the ride. You got cannons,
Yeah,
you've got,
yeah.
it's a really, while there's not, activities to do, it's really amazing to just look at it.
It's
You
almost
get,
like walking through a museum.
Yeah,
in
because you're
some
literally
respects.
walking through a recreation of a Spanish fort, which is really neat.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, and I definitely like, obviously, the ride itself. You got, a really cavey, creepy aesthetic in the beginning. You get the drop. And then you start finally getting into the pirate areas. You got Jack Sparrow. You have the various scenes that were altered. And
people are still bitter about the redhead, so
Yeah,
there's
well,
that too.
they'll get over it.
Yeah, eventually.
but yeah.
Okay. So, and we're going to hold off all of our honorable mentions for all these different areas until the end of this segment. So,
Okay.
there are some for Adventureland. Next, we're going to move on to Frontierland. So, Frontierland has one that Maddie only has gone on, and that is Big Thunder Mountain Railroad, which you go on quite frequently. What are your thoughts on that?
I will say, I do like the theming of it, especially in the queue. You get a really cool miner aesthetic. There's a lot of various signage that you can read when you go on, the longer wait times.
Maybe one day she'll actually take pictures for us or video.
What a novel idea.
Okay, fine. I'll do that next time, alright? But, yeah, there's a really cool aesthetic to it. You're actually in a legitimate train. It's not really like your typical roller coaster looking thing. It's supposed to be this runaway train. Unlike the one in Hollywood Studios. We're not going to worry about that. But it's a really cool one. There's, parts where you're outside, parts where you're inside. There's, this really cool cavern, which was supposed to, I think, be, a memorial to the original ride that was there, which was a much slower train ride through, Raybone Caverns and things like that. So there's, some parts of that, too. It's certainly not as thrilling of a roller coaster as some of the other ones are, like I mentioned with Space Mountain earlier. But it's still one that I really like to go on purely for the aesthetic, and that it is still, a really fun roller coaster, but it's definitely a little more tame. It's really in between the intensity of Barnstormer and Space Mountain.
Okay. I
So-
like that.
So maybe one day I'll
One-
get on it.
Maybe one day.
One day.
I'll give it a 7.5.
Okay.
Okay.
So the next ride is one that I like to refer to as Extortion Mountain. It's actually Splash Mountain, but we extorted Mommy several times to get her to start going on it and shamed her into it because we all remember the first time that we took Mommy on that.
Well, the first time all three of us tried. both
But
of
that
us
wasn't
went on.
my first time
No,
on
it
it.
wasn't.
I had already.
Which is
been on it, but I had such a traumatic experience I didn't want to go on it.
Right. So it wasn't your first time on it, but because you were going to wind up sitting in the front, you bailed as soon as you got up to that.
Yeah, it was,
I have to sit there.
It was our first time going on it.
Right.
It was like your second, and as soon as you saw that we were in the front row, you're like, nope, we're out.
Yeah. And then you and I actually went on it. We sat in the front, which didn't work out very well because being a person of size myself and not being a small, what were you, 7 at the time maybe, when we did it, the lap bar did not really secure you very well because of
It still doesn't.
me. So I was terrified that you'd be coming out there, so I was very cautious in making sure I was holding you tight next to me at the time. I love it. It's probably one of the longest rides in the park itself, which can almost justify the wait that it has because it's always usually got a long wait. I would give this one a 9 just for theming, for air conditioning, because you do go through an air conditioned area there.
Yeah.
And the drop, you can't beat that drop at the end. That's literally the most thrilling ride, I think, in Disney because of that drop. Michelle?
I would probably give it a 9 as well.
Not a 10.
No.
Wow, okay.
Because I'm terrified.
Because of the emotional distress that it causes.
Like, I really have to work myself up to it, even though I've been on it numerous times now.
Yeah.
And, I know what's going to happen, so there's no...
Well, and that last drop, the worst part is, it's like...
Yeah.
You know it's coming because
Right,
there's
yeah.
this incredibly long
Right.
incline up to it, so
And
it's
you
not even
got
like a
the
surprise.
Right,
Yeah,
and
and
you
like
got
the
vultures
vultures.
are talking to you, like teasing you, and you're like, I'm gonna die. Like, this is like, and all I kept, I think the first time I went on it, I kept thinking to myself, I fly on planes, I go through turbulence, and, it takes longer to, this is going to be over in 3 seconds, you'll be fine, 1, 2, 3, why is this taking so long, and, and then you're like, all right, I'm good. Hold on, let me clear off my glasses now, because I can't see.
So 9, and for you?
I'll also give it a 9.
Okay.
It's the reverse devil.
The reverse devil. There's the upside down devil.
I really do like it. It's certainly a very unique ride. It's the only log flume technically in Disney. My only reason for putting it lower is just that anxiety that you feel. You know that the drop is
But
there
that's
because
what makes it such a good ride.
Yeah,
Right.
that's what makes it such a good
Because
ride.
you know it's there. You've done it multiple times, and it's still that
Scares
anxiety.
And
you.
as soon as you get over it, it's
It's like
zippity-doo.
yeah, like it's just
Yay.
immediately chill. You don't even worry about it afterwards. It's like the majority of the ride, you know it's coming because it's advertised so much. You've been on it multiple
Right.
times.
You will get wet.
You will get wet.
All this other stuff.
You see all the exits, and it's like, oh my god. And
Why
then you
am I
get the-
doing this?
And then like you just feel that anxiety constantly throughout the entire ride, and then immediately when you get to the vulture, it's like, oh my god, this is it. I can't go back now. And then you just go all the way up, and then you finally drop down, and like you're screaming, and then afterwards it's just like, oh, you gotta chill. You got a little drop there.
Just
but
for the
then that's
record,
it.
I've never screamed going down it.
Yeah.
No,
Just for the
you
record.
laugh.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I even
But-
leaned out the one time and got a picture of you.
Thanks. It will be interesting to see because they are retheming it for Princess and the Frog, so it'll be interesting to see how all of that gets
Yeah.
redone.
Should be
because
interesting.
obviously the ride is probably still going to be the same. I don't think they're going to change how it goes. It's
Right.
just what will you see and what will you interact with.
So we're actually going to skip our next segment right now and go on to our honorable mentions, just so we can get them out of the way.
Okay.
So our first honorable mention is another great air-conditioned attraction that we have, and that is Hall of Presidents, which is, if you're a history buff, if you're into politics or anything like that, great educational ride, very attraction, but it's very inspirational to sit through. I'd give this one an 8 myself, under the current administration. That could change in the future. It is dictated by the current administration because the current president is a premier focus in audio animatronic. So it's important to note that. Michelle, what would you give it?
I would probably give it a 9.
Okay.
It's one of those. And especially because it's something that gets updated pretty almost every 4 years, really, with 4 or 8. And even sometimes, back in the day, they really didn't update. Like the president part got updated, but maybe the rest of the story didn't get updated. But now they've been updating the story a little bit more, so there's, some history to it. And I like that they, feature various different presidents. It's not just about who the current president is,
right?
But, who had an impact, no matter what political party they were part of.
And who didn't have an impact is obvious, too, from the
Absolutely.
From the show.
So that's what's, it's a great way to kind of have that, 20, 25-minute history lesson and, be comfortable and get out of the rain or get out of the heat. And, if you're a kid and you want to take a nap, take a nap. And for those parents, or those others that are interested in the history lesson, it's a nice little lesson.
Madison?
I'll give it a 7. I've never really been all that much of a history buff myself, but I can certainly appreciate what it's trying to do. It's definitely trying to teach you more about it and bring more awareness to that kind of stuff, and I do appreciate that it does change. I personally, it's really just one of those rides that I wouldn't really go on unless I'm trying to escape the rain, really.
Okay. That brings us to our next honorable mention, and that is the Enchanted Tiki Room.
In the tiki room.
Don't do that. They're going to give us a takedown notice.
Oh, yeah, dang.
So this is another air-conditioned sit-down attraction. You got a little pre-show that goes on there, a little comedy show and stuff. You go in, and there's some singing, and there's some jokes, and there's a lot of craning of the neck to look up. And there's benches that aren't very comfortable, but there's air conditioning, and that's really the most important thing. This I'd give a 6.
Okay.
Michelle?
I'd give a 9.
Okay.
Because, again, it's a nostalgia thing. The birds were the original audio animatronics that Walt had
They were
designed.
the original employees
They were
whose
the original
souls have been
cast members.
encapsulated in audio
Right.
animatronics.
They at some point they had revamped the show and made it worse, and a lot of people hated the show and refused to go to it. And at least Disney realized they had made a mistake and kind of reverted it.
It was their new
back.
Coke moment, huh?
Yeah, it was their new Coke moment, and they kind of went back, still modified it a little bit, but brought things back a little bit better. They realized, what? Don't mess with. If it's not broken, don't fix it.
Right.
And so again, it's one of those attractions that not everybody wants to go, but if you want a nice little break and see, again, how audio animatronics have evolved throughout the years, here's a good starting
Sure.
point to see how they start.
Madison?
7.5. It's a good. I like the theming of it. It is cool to see the audio animatronic birds. Not one that I'd go on constantly, but it's a nice air conditioning ride, and I certainly prefer it over Hall of Presidents if I'm looking to get air conditioning.
Okay. And the last honorable mention we have is a Tex Ritter special, Country Bear Jamboree. This one I've actually only sat through I think 2 or 3 times. It's an interesting show.
Mm-hmm.
Not one that really tickles my fancy. I'd give this one probably a 4. What would you give it,
I'd
dear?
probably give it a 7. It's a cute little get out of the air conditioning, musical variety show type thing. Again, this was one that they had modified it at one point. People didn't like the newer version of it, so they kind of brought it back. So it's kind of interesting. You have this whole cast of different characters, and a nice way to spend 15, 20 minutes in the air conditioning, and the seats are a little bit more padded. So
Okay. Madison?
I'll give it a 5. I only remember being on it once, really. It's certainly not one of the ones that it's like a go-to air conditioning spot. It was really just there. I didn't actually know it existed for a bit. The bear, it's interesting, but like, I don't know. Other attractions do it better. That's really all I can say.
Okay, I can't argue with that. So honorable mentions are out of the way. This brings us to our last attraction. We saved the best for last. This was at Liberty Square, and this brings us to the Haunted Mansion. And Michelle, we're going to let you head this one up.
What do you want me to say about it?
Whatever it is you want to say about it.
We're gonna be here for another hour.
How much time you got? Well, if you've ever listened to our podcast or, anything that I've talked to, and if you don't know, the Haunted Mansion is my absolutely most favorite ride ever. There is nothing that, for me, that tops it. And it's an 11 for me. I can't, it's just one. There's the nostalgia part of it. I remember going on it as a kid. I remember not being scared of it. And I was heartbroken when Maddie would be scared of it as a kid. I'm like, but no, you're my daughter. You should love this ride like I do. And it's one of those things where, for so long, you had people who loved the Haunted Mansion, but, you could never find things for it. You couldn't find merchandise for it. And now there's almost too much merchandise for it. So it's nice that it's finally gotten the love that it's deserved. It'll be interesting to see what the second version of the movie comes to be, how they do it justice. But it's just one of those, it's a dark ride, but there's various different tricks that they do. You have the Pepper's Ghost, and there's some holograms, and just the lighting, and just all these different things that they do to it. And, they've updated it throughout, the years, but still keeping a lot of the original aspect of it. I do like that they don't change it for Nightmare Before Christmas in Florida, but I do like that they change it for Nightmare Before Christmas in Disneyland, and that's an interesting take on it.
Sure.
My bucket list would be to visit all of the other parks and see their other versions of it. So I don't know why it has that effect on me. It just does. It's one of those things. It just always has. And, it's, once you finally get inside, it's great air conditioning, and it's, hysterical that the cast members have to be mean or have to be, grimacing. It's one of the only areas of the park where the cast members won't smile at you. They're kind of mean to you a little bit. So.
All right, Madison, what's your take on this one? And remember, it's Mommy's favorite ride.
She can hate it if she wants. It's okay. I won't be upset.
I'm gonna give it a 10.
Smart move.
While I definitely don't have an insane amount of love for it like you do, I can certainly really appreciate it. I certainly appreciate that it's one of the rides that certainly tried, quote-unquote, to be scary in the minds of Disney. It's definitely one of the rides that you're never really gonna see. Like, it's probably one of the most unique rides. You got, like, your dark rides, but they're not supposed to be scary all that much. But this, you have legitimate ghosts. There's dead people. There's jokes about being dead. And
there aren't any actual dead people on the ride, just for the record.
For the record.
They're already ghosts, so.
Yes. I really enjoyed the aesthetic of it. I liked the queue that they added. Again, it was one of the more interactive queues, but you got actually way more different stuff than you normally get in other queues. Like, there's a murder mystery part to it. There's, like, this thing where, like, you actually respond to a voice. There's, like, various musical instruments you can tap. It definitely has more unique stuff to do, and it's not, and it's necessarily for more older audiences. While you got stuff for little kids, there's more, like, stuff where you actually have to think, and, like, the murder mystery specifically can be specifically for the adults. I do like the queue where they added Madame Leota and she like interacts and stuff. That's a really cool tombstone. It's interesting how you go into the ride where it kind of starts, although you're not really on the ride. The stretching portraits is very iconic for this. You get, like, the narration. Again, the cast members being the cast members that you would never really see. Like, all the cast members always seem to smile or something. Nope, here they don't smile. And one of their jokes that I heard before was, like, I've seen the dead move faster than you. And, like, they always have these monotone voices. I absolutely love, like, dealing with those cast members. Even, like, dealing with people who are... Occasionally we'd, like, take you in your scooter because you can't walk all the long distance, and even then they're still in character.
Right.
And the ride itself is really fun. It has a lot of Pepper's ghosts, and that's really fun. I love how it makes you think that there's a bunch of ghosts. I love all the different tricks to it. The Doom Buggies are really fun. The aesthetic is just really great, so, yeah, 10.
Okay. Well, I would give it a 9, because I don't give anything 10s.
Right.
What I like is the array of technology that's in use. You have technology that's literally like 18th century technology with the Pepper's Ghost stuff, all the way up to 21st century stuff with holograms. It runs the gamut, and they make it work. It's believable.
Mm-hmm.
It's legitimate the way it works, and there's a fantastic set of stories. I wouldn't even say there's a storyline. There's numerous stories that are told throughout here that if you take the time to actually do a little research and see what these stories actually are, the stories themselves are very well thought out, they're very well themed, and the ride captures a lot of that exceedingly well. You feel immersed. There's a level of immersion to this ride that you don't feel, and a lot of that comes from the characters.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the cast that's there. Even when you're interacting with them, you know, you mentioned that I only have my scooter. Even when you're interacting with them in an official capacity from a safety standpoint, where they don't necessarily need to be in character, they still are, and they still maintain that level of professionalism.
Mm-hmm.
So it's a performance, you know, from the people that, in our case, we saw it. We went in for the Halloween event. And you had live characters that were in the graveyard interacting with people in character, which was cool. But the people that walk you in, the people that are riding running the machines, everybody's in character.
Yeah, like the one lady, since there was a line of people that were using scooters and such, they were saying only 2 carriages are allowed in each succession, and it's like they were in character the entire time. They refer to them as carriages, and it's like it was really cool.
Yeah. And the whole land, the whole area around it is themed.
Mm-hmm.
You know, the queue is themed. You walk out, you have the pet cemetery, you have the music, you have the gift shop is themed. That entire area is
the hearse.
themed. You have the hearse out front, the queue lines, everything. When you walk into that area, you literally feel like you're part of it. You know, you've got the external effects on the facade of the mansion, which you don't usually get that on most of the other rides.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's an immersive experience just walking past it, not even getting on the ride.
Right.
Yeah.
So it's a very well done ride, and it really draws you into it. So it's definitely one of the best well run rides I think that they have there.
Yep.
I think that is it. I'm sure there's a lot of other things that we could talk about with Magic Kingdom, but we were just trying to confine ourselves to the attractions in this podcast. I think we'll be back next week with our Hollywood Studios review, followed closely by our Epcot review. Any closing thoughts that we want to throw out there for folks? No? Okay. Don't buy the Genie Plus. It's a scam.
Yeah.
That's my 2 cents.
Fair enough.
But I think that's it. Before we do go, I do want to once again invite our listening and viewing audience to subscribe to the podcast. You can find audio versions of this podcast listed as Insights into Teens. You can also find audio and video of all of the network's podcasts listed as Insights into Things. We're available on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google, Stitcher, Castro, etc., etc. I would also invite you to write in, give us your feedback. You can email us at comments@insightsintothings.com. You can hit us on Twitter at twitter.com/insights_things. We're on Facebook at facebook.com/insightsintothingspodcast. We do stream 5 days a week on Twitch at twitch.tv/insightsintothings. If you're an Amazon Prime subscriber, you do get a free monthly Twitch Prime subscription. We'd appreciate your support through that. Or you can get links to all that and much more on our official website at www.insightsintothings.com. And you.
And don't forget to check out our other two podcasts, Insights and Entertainment, hosted by you and Mommy, most of the time, and Insights into Tomorrow, our monthly podcast, hosted by you and my brother Sam, that's not technically monthly anymore.
Nor does he always host it, so.
Yes.
Anyway, someone will be sitting in with me on it. That's it. Another one in the books.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.